if the leader is the regulator of the culture, what behaviors, what actions, behaviors, habits, rituals, what stories are they supposed to be telling with how they show up, not just what they say. We're all all of us, regardless of position within the organization, are transmitting information to everyone around us. We're telling stories, and we're transmitting belief systems of what is important in a list, top to bottom, what is most important, what is least important. Everyone is transmitting data simultaneously in a group, in a team, in an organization. It's why it's so obvious when the culture isn't there. There's always a culture. The question is, how much influence does the organization have over it, which becomes exceedingly more important to pay attention to as the organization becomes an organization, as people organize, as systems, as populaces increase, the systems and the systems must complement them in order for information to flow, for people to be in formation within the most value-add context based on who they are, which is a compilation of what they know, what they don't know, what they know, they know, what they know, they don't know, what they think they know, that just ain't so, what they think they don't know, that they know, and so on and so forth. We hear these adages like, people have blind spots. We have blind spots. We all have blind spots. What does that actually mean? What does that actually mean? Well, there's a conversation we had about what it means from a personal standpoint, like a self-awareness standpoint, a blind spot as it relates to me, the individual. There's also, there's also a conversation around interesting, maybe this is a blind spot. And in a sense, what I'm doing is attempting to navigate and cross a threshold in answering this question for a monologue on the 11th day of me exploring a greater idea of what is company culture and the preceding questions that follow from that. In this case, if leaders are the regulator of the culture, what actions, behaviors, habits, what rituals, what signals should they be sending to protect culture or to limit the decay or negate the decay of culture? And even so, if that's a question that I'm pursuing, I'm attempting to answer it, but through answering it, other questions are coming about. And let's say, even if I haven't answered the question, I've crossed the threshold. I may have gotten farther in answering the question by actually not answering the question directly, but indirectly thinking through other questions that haven't been asked, the better questions, or refining the actual question. Like, for example, what if it's not about controlling or stopping or even limiting the decay of the culture, but responding or relating to it or restoring it or renewing it. And how does a leader, or how do leaders, and then how do the systems that empower or disempower the leaders actually relate to the organization, relate to the people, and and how does the organization even relate to itself? Is it even a self? If itself is like the idea or the construct, the construction of many ideas that are pulling everyone towards believing that their job is relevant, what they do matters, how much energy they put into their day-to-day effort makes a difference. A team player who doesn't believe their energy that they put into their work, their job, will make a difference, not only, and becomes generational, there's a difference between making a difference to the world and making a difference as if I put in the effort, I will be recognized, I will be rewarded, I will be promoted. Someone that is attempting to climb, quote unquote, the corporate ladder is less likely to climb if they believe that as soon as they get to the top of the ladder, they'll start right at the bottom. Many company cultures digress. They decay to a point, absent that regulation that within the system that leadership is a part of, or how leadership leads is a part of renewing it and restoring it. I think many people climb that corporate ladder and they're like Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the hill, where he gets to the top of the hill and all of a sudden he's at the bottom of the hill, or like, so their career feels like that. There's only so long before they check out, and how the organization is governed and how it is led, and that the systems, the structures and systems are in place to increase the responsibility of the people that are hired to it, that are empowered and through the rituals, through the camaraderie, through the relationships, through the belief in the organization, through the belief in why the organization exists and how it actually serves. Like that alignment between that it actually matters what they do, and there's feedback of my life will be taken care of. I will be able to pay my bills. I will not have to work. I will not have to sacrifice at this degree, at this level of tension and stress forever. There will be something on the other side. It's the pursuit of happiness. Someday I will be happy. That story that drives productivity and production and like almost like a smiling misery of the labor. Like, it doesn't feel like work when it's humming, when everyone is bought in and moving in that direction. That becomes exceedingly difficult to have at scale, if not impossible. The larger the organization, there's going to be turnover. Turnover, in a sense, even it's less about is there going to be turnover, and that there is turnover, than how does turnover occur to cost the organization the least amount while spreading enough goodwill so that the organization's culture is dependable, trustworthy, in the sense that people, they believe they know what they're going to get, and signals to the marketplace. That's a great place to work. It could say it's a great place to work, and every sign, post, every symbol, every advertisement, tons of capital could be invested in making it look. And this is where the culture becomes the stories and the value propositions transmitted and not lived out. It could be transmitted, and we see this globally, where there are, let's just say, societies that position themselves as, this is argued, in so many different ways, and maybe in the sense of, in the West, the opportunity to argue it, even though it's not fully true, but to reveal those opinions is what renews and restores the West. Because I was thinking, as someone born in the West, my immediate, based on the stories that I've come up with from this culture, through this culture, would be to project on other societies I've not been to. I've not been to those companies. I've not worked in those companies. I've watched documentaries on those companies. If I'm talking about countries, I've read books on those countries, and by authors from them and not from them. I don't, off the top of my head, I don't have all the data on all of the books or the documentaries on who exactly made them and what their stories were and how that may have influenced their opinions or how they transmitted the value proposition of those countries or not. But so that there's a projection there that lives, that the more bought in I am to the country that I inhabit, the company that I work for, that would demonstrate that it's done its job creating a capacity for buy-in, despite the innate suffering that I would have as an individual of why am I spending my life working here? I don't really understand what this company does. I don't know why it exists. I'm not sure what my job is. In a very real sense, being a part of a country, a person has to figure these things out. Every country is battling with the fact that every person that is inhabiting the country they were born in, let's say that born in, and that's part of their national identity. Each country is having to respond and transmit its values, transmit its stories, create buy-in, and create upward mobility. So the person, each individual is battling with, why am I here in life? Who am I? Oh, I am I am American. I am German. I am Chinese. I am Korean. I am whatever. I am. There's almost 200 countries. I don't know the exact number. So a country, if it's a company, is adopting this staff, this labor, this population, and the population that is been thrown into the world. They're and everybody has the big why of why am I here, whether they are philosophically inclined or not. Why am I here, and what am I supposed to do? And there's unknown in that, and part of the value of the company would be to help protect the populace, or protect the individual, so that the individual can protect in the sense that if there are other companies competing with that company that are taking its land, or taking its access to food and water and shelter, those basic needs, it will be much harder for that individual to move more deeply into their potential identity, their potential role, and take on responsibilities beyond fight or flight, protection and violence. So, and a human being that's in a state of protection and violence is going to have a different lived experience than a human being that is in a season of reflection and stewardship, or even, not even, that's like one scenario. A split between labor and interpersonal independence. So a nuclear family, the person that has their life, their identity within their children, their spouse, and their familial network that's safe within that company, that country, and they also, another part of who they are is, and there's different fragment, containers of who they are that are, it's like a flywheel, that are moving in misaligned in various capacities, but aligned enough for that individual to function within that society and to be bought into the company that they work for and with, and not on the fringe where they're leaving it in a gruff, like, oh, I hate that company, or I don't want that. Or they're trying to revolt against their company and take over the board internally, which undermines the current management and potentially throws the whole system into an array. And we see this with organizations that are going through partnership dilutions or breakups or family transitions, is that there's the level of uncertainty increases the level of anxiety. People don't know what to do. The what is so confused and fragmented. The who isn't sure of what to do or why to do it. And now that the how slows down, and then the overall why and the meaning disappears. And that can happen because growth happens, where the what grows so much that the who is confused, and then the how is unclear, and then the why disappears from invisible threads are the strongest ties, Nietzsche said. The why disappears, so now the anxiety is up, and then less and less and less and less is getting done, and now people are just all for themselves and infighting and going against each other. And that happens in organizations all the time, which is why the integration piece is so important. When there's family transitions, when there's partnership conflicts, when there's acquisition, the integration piece of understanding who is necessary, why are they necessary, how to exit those that are not in a position of value for the organization, and the finesse, the art to that, not just the science and the art coming together, is where the value is created, when there's that the colonialism of capital, where organizations are acquiring other products and services, other good ideas. It could be the best product and service, but if the culture piece isn't executed adequately, that can actually undermine the very value of how much the organization spent to get that product or service rolled up into its empire. And because it has so much, it has more capital, more resources, and the larger it is, the more and more exceedingly difficult it is for the information to flow in a way where the spirit is, the attention is as pure as it once was, so that it will naturally spend more capital to get less of a return from those other cultures it absorbs. There's a tremendous value in understanding how to do due diligence of those organizations that it's acquiring, their products and services, in a way that lowers revolt of their people towards the other organization, increases adoption of those people into the overall, into the story of all, the grander story of why they should be bought into the stories that they're living out within their organizations. And all this is the same, is because as I'm going into as I'm attempting to cross the threshold to answer this question, which I was thinking about before hitting record, which is, if leaders are the regulator of the culture, what actions or behaviors or rituals, rituals, what are they signaling to protect the culture from decay? And the decay is part and so in that, there's all these other questions or stories or metaphors or ideas or examples that that are just coming to mind. And that is an exploration, and it's a process. And it's not, I am not, if I'm pursuing it and I'm trying to think through this question, it's unpredictable, it's unclear. I can't see clearly, and I'm going to trip and I'm going to stumble, and the conversation could decay. It will come out, and then add into the fact that I'm recording it doubly, and then it slows down on my AI tools, that later I could look back and think and write and develop, and it's a little bit slower than I would have liked to. So I just set all this to fill the space, so I'm not just staring at the camera while I click record. The conversation will naturally digress because it's not canned. There isn't an end. I'm not thinking for you. I'm not forcing you to think what I think. There is an implicit persuasion in the sense that I have a script I'm going to go through before I record this. So there's an end in mind, and a percentage of you say, it's not for me. A percentage, I'm not sure. And then a small percentage is like, yes, I'm going to buy that thing. I'm not even sure where I'm going. I'm exploring. It's unpredictable. It's scary, anxiety creating, potentially debilitating. The culture between us will decay. The alignment between us will decay. The signal will be like, I don't get it. What's happening? I'm not following. That is inevitable that's going to happen. But through this conversation, it's about the quicker I can get it back, the quicker I can realign it. That will be based on competence and willingness to explore. There's like this admixture of courage when things are going worse. So the courage has to increase the worse things are getting. The better things are getting, there's like a humility to continue that sacrifice, to live out the very values that are no longer, there are different values. The conditions impact the values, and the conditions that are the conditions of our environment that are in occurrence when we're eating the fruit of our success unconsciously undermine the behaviors, the habits, the rituals. So some other influence above that influence. So if it's like, if the person's here, so let's just say a person, someone considers themselves unsuccessful, and the world would agree in every metric, let's just say. And now they've sacrificed everything, all time and energy, but just say everything, all the other, they've sacrificed their identity in many respects, and now they're successful. I guess within the, let's say, the world is they say capitalism. The world is, I think, everything structures back to capital, because even though there's other models out there going on, they still go back to the financial system undergirds everything. So let's just say you go from being at the bottom to getting to the top. We'll use that as a visual instead of adding economics. So going from the bottom to going to the top. Now one is at the top. So at the bottom, there are conditions of an environment that below the individuals cannot articulate through words necessarily, isn't thinking about. There are conditions that are occurring that are actually influencing the thoughts that come up. So like the thoughts that come up that are then, meanings are attached, and then actions and behaviors and habits and life essentially occurs because the conditions of that environment. So like you see, people that come from less means, a percentage of them will then spend the rest of their life attempting to gather. They have less resources. They attempt to gather resources. So now they've gathered the resources. Okay. The conditions of the environment when they have all the resources actually disincentivize the actions, behaviors, habits, and identity that it takes to get those resources. So a percentage of them destroy themselves. A percentage of them never stop. You find them, they're still the same person. I want to speak to that one. They're still the same person as when they had nothing. Those are the entrepreneurs that you hear about, you read about, that they live the same. That's on an extreme as they did at the beginning. Their identity hasn't changed. So they're still modeling they're still living through the values, living through the stories that are going to continue providing to them and modeling the core values that align with that economic system. Where you see the fracture is in the generation below them, that the conditions of their environment influence different actions, habits, and behaviors that conflict with the generation above them. And that leads inevitably to conflict. They're different human beings. And now this is where systems and structure and governance and education and family story and all of the things, if we're talking about entrepreneurs that go from a generation one to now they've created this huge opportunity for success for future generations, they're just like a country needs to inspire its people on it, not just protect it and give it resources, and give it opportunity, but actually teach it things and have national pride from understanding its history and believing in its governance and believing in the state and believing in the presidents and having the belief and having the buy-in and having that national pride. It's key for that country to continue to thrive over generations. Same thing with a family, same thing with a business that moves from generation to generation, whether it's family-led or not. Okay, so where I'm going with this is that percentage of entrepreneurs that had nothing and then get something, the values that got them that, it's interesting now that I think about it. They're two different entrepreneurs. The one that loses it, they built their economic power from a different set of core values than the person that is acting the same. And the reason I'm thinking about that right now is because these are two different identities. So you go from being a creator and it's like high creation, low consumption, and now you have a lot that you can consume, but you're still low consumption, high creator. That's a different extreme than high creator, high consumption. So high creator creates a success, and they're consuming high, and now when there's a time where there's less to consume macro-wise, there's still the high consumption. They could be a high creator, but they're not going to be alive long enough in business to seize the opportunity, because the conditions of the environment impact the consumption and the creation. And so, you look at people like a Buffett, who had the high creation, low consumption over so many decades. It makes you wonder, is that something that him and his partners were thinking about when they decided to start building what they were building? Or somewhere along the way they realized, oh my gosh, if we just stay doing this for long enough, we're smart. We know, we're aware we're not the smartest. We don't need to be the smartest. We don't have the pedigree of those others that have those advantages of like where they went to school or how old their families are or whatever. But if we stay in this long enough and we follow the plan, because the forces are so powerful to take away attention of the leaders, because this goes back to the prompt, the leader regulates the culture based on where the attention is, reflects what they value, and what they value is what other people copycat, and the long-term return on that copycatting, that's Girard, is an exponential growth curve of like essentially labor reorienting itself around capital versus orienting itself away from capital. And whenever entrepreneurs orient themselves away from capital, they become broker because now their consumption is very high, the expectation of them in society is very high, and they're creating less. Eventually they go out of business, whether that's a family office, whether that's a operator that's not running their business anymore. Their fall is as great as their rise. Pride comes before the fall. Yada, yada, yada. The expectations are higher for them. The predictability is they're going to pay for all the meals. There's so much responsibility. The conditions of their environment start corrupting them because there's less accountability, because being held to account is judged. Judgment comes from direct communication. Plenty of people are smarter, or even if they're not smart, whatever smart that even means, they could have less resources and less social brand. They could have less of everything. It doesn't mean their opinions aren't valuable. In fact, people lower on the totem pole have access to information. Thing ran out of. I have to click the button. People lower on the totem pole have access to information because the new information is at the bottom. And then it goes to the top. The new information at the bottom, it goes to the top. The new information at the bottom, it goes to the top. In the hierarchical system. Now, who knows what technology is going to do to this? That's a topic for another day. Maybe in a sense it's making the world flatter, and that'll make information transmit faster in the species. Who knows what's going to do that for society? That could be really amazing, but it's probably going to be amazing after something that's really kind of scary and crazy, and cool, just because that's, past performance doesn't dictate future performance. But the role of information tends to go down faster than it goes up. So that's where the leader regulates the system by paying attention. They have to be sacrificing for the organization. Just because they have the options not to go to the office, not to talk to anyone. They don't have to, quote unquote, talk to. They have all this optionality as a consequence of the influence in their environment, and the mind starts playing tricks in the sense of sending different signals, sharing different stories than the signals and stories that drove them to success in the first place, where they as individuals can very well easily stop doing the things that made them successful leaders in the first place. And that that can speed up the decay of the culture, and it can also make it less probable that the culture renews itself and makes it a stronger environment for the next generation of leaders to rise up.
Good.
Yep.